Well, ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for a late video and I apologize for no video on Friday. Unfortunately, I really wasn't feeling that well and I really didn't feel up to making a video, so I didn't. In any case, I'm sure you tuned in today for more retardation because, as you know, retardation in South Africa is at all-time highs. So let's actually start off with the main video. But before I do, can I yet again remind you, if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel and help me on my journey to 200,000 subscribers. So let's start off with the first news story. And I must say, I got circulated this voice note on Saturday. It got sent to me by some individuals I know. I did listen to it and I was a little bit like, wow. And then, I don't know, I also was a little bit skeptical as to whether it actually occurred in the way that it did. So let's go through it. So what happened? Well, actually, it involved King David's High School in Johannesburg, specifically their Linksfield campus. Now, if you know what King David is, it's a Jewish school. And the voice note alleged that King David was due to play a tennis match with Roedean. So if you know what Roedean is a private school in Johannesburg. Lots of the entrepreneurs love to send their kids there. It's been featured by Richard Wilkinson on the school capture reports. The news was that they had hired themselves some imams and some Islamists to go there and teach Islamic studies. Why they decided to teach that at a private school, don't know. It's not an Islamic school, by the way. They just felt that it would be better if they dropped, and I quote, hymns and choir practice for Islamic studies. So that's the type of school we're dealing with. But in any case, I must remind you that all of this was captured by Richard Wilkinson in his school capture reports. If you haven't already read that, go read it. Anyway, let's get on to what happened. So apparently the voice note that was circulating alleged that it had come from the deputy head. So that's Bruce, and that's the deputy head of King David. And he alleges that Roedean refused to play tennis with the players as they walked onto the courts because they were Jewish. Now, if that's true, that's a breach of the Constitution. Now, Roedean, in a letter to parents seen by News 24, says that the voice note is factually incorrect and does not reflect the documented sequence of events, and it rejects unequivocally any allegations of antisemitism. Apparently they, follow the rules in the Constitution. I'm not sure if they do, but anyway, let's carry on. So Roedean says that it formally notified King David on the 2nd of February that it could not field a team due to school commitments, including compulsory academic workshops, and requested postponement or cancelment. Now, King David acknowledged, according to Roedean, and said that the fixture would be recorded as a forfeit as per the protocol. Now, the King David School apparently told parents that the issue was being investigated via appropriate channels. So we're jumping ahead here, and I'm still not sure. Did this communication occur with the school? Did they ask for a postponement? Or did they really go onto a field and get told that they weren't going to play due to the individuals being Jewish? They say that it's being investigated in consultation with the ISASA and the Jewish Board of Deputies and the SABJE, that's the Jewish Education Board. And they're all meeting with Roedean and asking stakeholders not to speculate whilst the process unfolds. But I got to ask, why aren't we investigating something if it didn't occur, right? I mean, there would basically be nothing to investigate. You would literally say, well, I told you we weren't going to be there and we weren't there. Now, if you cancel a match and then you go there, there'll be no one there, right? So how can you go there and get told that you're not going to play? It's very conflicting. Now, the South African Jewish Board of Deputies, their General Counsel, condemned what they called as blatant prejudice, refusal to honor the scheduled fixture, and saying that the refusal to play Jewish learners is deeply unsettling. And it would be, because it would be a breach of the Constitution. Now, Roedean said that it's directly engaged with King David to ensure the circumstances are fully understood and addressed through appropriate processes, and that it would be inappropriate to give out facts to the public at this stage. They also said that anti-Semitism has no place in their school, although they did say that further communication would follow. And I've got to say, the entire thing is puzzling, because the school is known to have imported an Islamist curriculum. And we all know what that leads to. The individuals pushing that Islamist curriculum are obviously anti-Zionist and anti-Jewish and what. At the same time, if they have done this as a breach of the Constitution, because it's all good and fine to go around the Republic saying free Palestine or whatever other bull rubbish, but there are laws and processes in the land. You can't discriminate against one's religion. So this is really confusing, because if they did say that they were postponing or cancelling the event, then you would get there and there'd just be no one there. There'd be no one to say to you, well, we're not playing you because you're Jewish. Like, there'd just literally be no one there. It'd be an empty school, right? So what's there to investigate? Right, ladies and gentlemen, I was just editing my video and I got to say that I got given some further information, and this actually came to light with regard to the very story I just made. So this is kind of like extra info. Yeah. So I've actually been forwarded a voice recording of a conversation that occurred between Roedean and King David. I've listened to the entire thing, and to be frank, it really casts doubts on everything that Roedean is saying. So Roedean put out a statement last night basically saying they reject claims of anti-Semitic conduct, and they say they didn't actually postpone or cancel it because of, anything that was going on. As I said to you in the video I just recorded, they said that it was, timetabling issues. But the reality is I've just listened to the telephone call that occurred between Roedean and King David, and Roedean makes it very clear that they are getting pressure from parents. So apparently their parents at their school are placing them pressures on them not to do anything with King David, because apparently the school must side with the position made by the government against, Israel. So that means that somehow we hate Jews, I suppose. Is that what the ICJ case is about? Or I don't know. But apparently, according to these individuals, you can't play with this school specifically because the parents in their community are putting pressure on them, Roedean, to disassociate themselves from King David. So again, I've got to re-highlight to you again the research done by Richard Wilkinson around the capture of the school through an Islamist ideology. This was all self-imposed. This is a private school. This didn't have to go this way. But this is what we're dealing with. So everything that Roedean School is saying is, well, bullshit. They're lying through their teeth. I've heard the call. They are lying, categorically lying. The school clearly had an issue with King David for being Jewish, and this is clearly anti-Semitic behavior. I just find the entire thing slightly insidious. Let me know what you think in the comments. Now, talking of insidious, we need to talk about probably the most important news story of last week, and that is the Minister in the Presidency for Women, Youth and Persons with Disabilities. Now, this specific job title, you got to understand that when Milei went into Argentina, this was also one of those socialist type bullshit jobs that the socialist governments always tend to implement. And this was one of the key jobs that Milei said, why that too? He's just like, he cut it, he got rid of it, he said it was a load of bullshit. And to be fair, it is kind of a load of bullshit. But anyway, let's see what happened. This individual went to the 47th anniversary commemoration of Iran's Islamic Revolution. Now, they went to the embassy in Pretoria. Now, you got to remember that at the moment, Iran's Revolutionary Guard are slaughtering its own individuals, its own citizens by the thousands. And they're doing this because of protests. So now we're going there to Iran's embassy to say, great, revolutionary, whatever. Yeah, this isn't a good look. Now, she gave a speech when she was there, and she referred to the enduring diplomatic ties that South Africa shares with Iran and spoke of the shared values and lessons. She praised Iran's historical legacy, cultural heritage, and reaffirmed bonds of friendship and cooperation. The first thing I'm going to draw reference to is the shared values and lessons. The ANC literally created an entire day to commemorate the massacre of 60 plus people at Sharpeville in South Africa. Under 70 people died. Over 30,000 individuals have been killed so far in Iran due to brutal repression against anti-government protests. Rights groups, reporters, academics, doctors killed at point-blank execution range. So now we're going to talk of the shared values. What shared values? You literally created a public holiday to the death of under 70 people whilst glorifying the death of over 30,000 people. Like, the insidiousness of this government is just off the charts. Now, said retarded minister highlighted the economic ties and suggested opportunities for exchanges and cooperation. South Africa's economic ties with Iran is like a few million rand. A few million rand is like a rounding error on most countries' balance sheets. Our trade with Iran is virtually non-existent. Obviously, apart from MTN Iran sale, which the ANC, through its MTN proxies, have benefited from. But in terms of economic ties, there aren't any. I mean, the ANC may have, allegedly, got some kind of economic ties, but there isn't one for the rest of the country. We don't trade with Iran. So again, what nonsense is this woman talking about? Now, she linked Iran to themes in South Africa's history, like the 1976 Soweto uprising and the Women's March. Have you seen what they do to women in Iran? Like, this isn't a free country for women. They're required to cover up, or they get acid thrown in their face. Many of them can't go to school. They don't get forms of government subsidies. Women are repressed in Iran. They're made to wear a burqa. What is this nonsense? There's nothing in the brain cells here. These people are retarded. The problem is that South Africa's relationship with Tehran has costs. These have contributed directly to the deterioration of our ties with the US. And Iran constantly seems to use its relationship with South Africa to counter perceptions of isolation. It's like, don't worry, we've got a friend in South Africa. You see, the thing is that South Africa got access to many global bodies at the end of apartheid. It got it through a lot of goodwill because of the Mandela effect. South Africa got given access to the UN human rights. We got put on the UN. We got access to the international courts. We got access to preferential trade with the US. A lot of goodwill was extended to South Africa at the end of apartheid to rebuild the country underneath the now black majority rule. The reality is that many of the countries that South Africa sides with, that we want to kind of pretend that are somehow our allies, they don't have the same rights. They don't have the same access to the UN. They don't have the same access to the ICJ. So they use South Africa and our links to those institutions as ways to weaponize our country for their own benefits. Now, the problem is that South Africa is too easy to capture. I've said this before. State capture, police capture, this capture, tenderpreneur capture, foreign capture. South Africa can just easily be bought and captured. That's the problem, and that's why they use South Africa in this vein to counter perceptions of isolation. Because they're like, no, we're not isolated. Look, South Africa's in our corner, and they're like an upstanding member of the global order. But the problem is they're not. South Africa is not an upstanding member, and it is looking more and more like an ally of despots daily. Now, the presidency has issued a statement calling the unrest and loss of life in Iran concerning and urging restraint, and saying that suitable peace requires solutions centered on the agency of the Iranian people. So basically, the Iranian people must be left alone to sort their own problems out. And yeah, it's concerning that the Iranian regime is killing over 30,000 people in the most horrendous manners. But, you know, stay out of it. It's nothing to do with us. And to that, guys, I would say, stay out of Israel, stay out of Gaza, nothing to do with you. See how this works. Except it doesn't, because the South African government is captured. Now, South Africa also, we must remember this, abstained on a UN Human Rights Council resolution which condemned Iran's violent repression of its citizens and also called for an investigation into the violent repressions to see how bad they were. Now, the resolution text is quoted as deploring the thousands of deaths, including children. Remember, children are so important to the ANC. They hate to see the deaths of Gazan children. Iranian children, no, they're fine. Nigerian children, fine. Gazan children, no, you can't do that because they've been killed by Israel. Now, the ANC abstained from this notion, and they said that they recognized the right to peaceful protest and were disturbed by the repression, but raised concerns about foreign interference. So they basically said that they don't want to condemn them because foreign interference in Iran has led to this. And then the ANC went further to say they suspect Israel of fomenting dissent. And so they couldn't support an independent inquiry into these breaches by all because it wouldn't be fair. Are you noticing the hypocrisy at which these people talk? I mean, the level of shite that comes out the ANC's mouth is just off the freaking charts. In any case, I can tell you that a lot of people online all notice the same hypocritical bullshit coming out the ANC's mouth. And I got to say, at this point in time, I've said this before, I'll say it again, The ANC is beyond hope. They are literally horrendous. We need to rid ourselves of the ANC. It will be the death of us all. In any case, that's just my opinion. Let me know what you think in the comments. Until tomorrow, bye.